So fantastic, a newsman, very exciting. So Siman Lamed Daled is where we're going to be starting. It's the next major Siman, which is the Siman of Eirusin and Birchas Eirusin. It's not a long Siman, but it lends itself to a lot of lomdus and really important understanding, and therefore we're not going to dive straight in. We are going to start with this, the sheet that I've prepared, which is a background to the sugya and the main shittas harishonim, which we're going to discover is quite complex. Question number 1. Is Eirusin a mitzvah? If it is a mitzvah, is it a separate mitzvah to Nisuin? Or is it all one mitzvah? The bracha that we make on it, whose chiyuv is it? What type of bracha, what is the category that it actually falls under? And all of these things make massive nafkaminas lahalacha. And therefore we're going to go through the basic sugyas, have a look at 2 main shittas harishonim, the Rambam Chinuch and the Smag versus many of the other Rishonim, and we'll see massive differences lahalacha lemaisa, which will eventually come out once we've done the Mechaber Ramah and the Chalkas Mechokik, the Beis Shmuel and the Pischei Tshuva, and we'll see some Chasam Sofer, Nodi Behuda, all the way down to Rabbi Eliashiv's Hanhogas under the Chuppah, which are different to mine, and I learnt a lot in preparing for this, and let's hope we'll all enjoy this. Let's start off. The first thing is a Gemara, always. Zog der Heilige Gemara. Ksubas dav zayin amud beis. Tani idoch. Mevorchin berchas chasanim bebeis chasanim u berchas eirusin bebeis eirusin. Frag the Gemara, berchas eirusin mai mevorech. What is berchas eirusin? Rovin barav ada v'rabba barav ada. Tarvai mishvei Rav Yehuda Amra baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. And we are going to see in the Rishonim big differences in the nusach. And again, there's what we do, potentially what Sephardim do, and big nafkaminas. So let's focus on this. The Gemara says, Asher Kiddishonu, you tell me what you think this is. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, Asher Kiddishonu b'mitzvosav, v'tzivonu al ha'aroyos, v'osar lonu es ha'arusos, v'hitir lonu es ha'nesuos al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin. What a fascinating bracha. Let's deconstruct it a bit. Anybody have any thoughts on this before we go any further? If you were to...
It sounds like an instruction, like a description on a bracha.
Interesting.
There's also something funny. Tzivanu el ha'arayot.
Yeah.
But I know it's not really the meaning.
No, but you're actually onto a good thing. Could you flesh out your question?
But the idea is like, of course, like tzivani, like wash me'arayot.
Oh,
Tzivanu al ha'arayot.
very good. And that is a question that the Rishonim we're going to see. The Rishonim ask, where do we find a mitzvah, a bracha, on Asher Kiddishonu b'mitzvosav tzivanu al eivei min hachayim. Tzivanu al hashchita. We don't do that. Where do we find that we make a bracha on an issa? A brichas, and what type of bracha does it sound like? So it's interesting, Kobe's saying, it's like a bit of a narrative, it's like a bit of a story, which is a little bit unusual. Where do we find, normally, and this again, the Rishonim, we're going to pick up on it straight away. What is it? Give me an example of a classic bracha. By the way, I'm making an assumption at the moment, which is that it is a Birchas HaMitzvahs. Why, do you think I'm justified in making that assumption? It says it on the tin. Duh. To quote the famous philosopher Homer, duh, of course. Asher Kiddishonu b'mitzvosav tzivanu. It sounds, if it walks like a Birchas HaMitzvahs, quacks like a Birchas HaMitzvahs, it probably is a Birchas HaMitzvahs. Yeah? Asher Kiddishonu b'mitzvosav. But then we go off-piste, right? We do something a bit different. What does a normal Birchas HaMitzvahs sound like? Asher Kiddishonu b'mitzvosav tzivanu al hamila. Al achilas matzah. They are short, they are generally speaking to the point, and they don't give us this narrative. I mean, chuppahs would be maybe less dramatic if we had that, but that's not a reason, obviously. So what's going on over here? So you're already beginning to pick up. Yesh mashu po manyen, charig, something unusual. So let's go weiter. Hitler says, Rav Acha Bereid Rava Messiah Bey But here's a funny thing. It has a seal. The bracha has a seal. It's a Birchas HaMitzvahs with its own, it's a bracha arichta, right? It has its own bracha tagged onto the end. Rav Acha used to add on, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadesh Yisrael, Al Yidei Chuppah V'Kiddushin. So he would add on to this Birchas HaMitzvahs at the end. You see immediately, the Gemara picks up on the fact that this is a machlokus. This was not by any means universal, whether to finish off or not. It seems it was only Rav Acha Berei Derova added this bit on. The others, the implication is, the others didn't. So the Gemara picks up on this and says, what's going on? Man de loy chosim. The ones that didn't have the chasima, va'um nisht, midad have abrichas peiros, abrichas mitzvahs. Because they thought this is very similar to a classic Birchas HaMitzvahs where there is no chasima, a Baruch Atah Hashem at the end. Yeah? Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu lishma yakol shofar Baruch Atah Hashem. I don't know, something the mitzvah to hear. We don't do that. Classic Birchas HaMitzvahs, there's no chasima. Now, uman de chosim, Rav Acha, who did make a chasima, mida dehava akidusha. He compared it to kedusha, kiddush. What's going on? Says Rashi. I'll print it out. The Rashi is here for you, source 2. But now here's the first point that becomes really, really interesting. Zogt Rashi, v'os alonu es ha'arusos miderabanon shegozru al hayichud shel pnuya. Chazal goes on the yichud of a pnuya, va'af arusa lo hitiru ad shetikonis lechuppah. It's a midrabanon. Once you have done kiddushin, she is an eshes ish, and despite the fact you have not yet done nisuin, min ha-Torah, it seems she's mutter to you. So it's a bracha on the bracha might be on the mitzvah. Assuming it's a Birchas HaMitzvahs, then the first bit's okay. Well, asher kiddushanu mitzvahs v'tzivanu alo aroyos, really? Which aroyos? You mean the fact that she was an erva before I did kiddushin? Next question we're going to have to deal with is, when do we make this bracha? Are we making this bracha before we do the mitzvah, like we normally do? Presumably, right? Then we're going to have to ask ourselves, then what am I doing with the second set of brachas with Birchas Nitzuin? What's going on? So the first bombshell that Rashi drops on us is that v'osar lonu es ha'arusos means even la'acha kiddushin, she is only also to me midirabonon. Ubibrocha, because v'afarusa lahitiru atikonis lechuppah ubibrocha. Kid appreciates, the Gemara said, Chazal say, kala b'loy brocha asura leba'ala kenida. A kala that over which one has not made a brocha, she is also to her husband like a nida. Now, obviously, so Rashi's basically saying now the brocha is on a drabonon. The bracha is now on a drabonon. Zot Rashi, yes, I'm well aware of that. V'adrabonon nami mevorchin v'tzivonu v'osar lonu. Like we find by Ner Chanukah, the classic Gemara, heichon tzivonu it's lo sasur, it's drabonon. So the first bombshell to have clear in our mind is asher kiddushanu mitzvos v'tzivonu al ha'aroyos. Okay, that I understand. There's an issa b'aroyos. V'hitir v'osar lonu es ha'arusos. Who was osar arusos? Chazal were osar. So I'm making a bracha essentially on a drabonon. Says Rashi, yes, you're making a bracha on a drabonon, like the famous Gemara in Shabbos by Chanukah. V'hitir lanu es neshoseinu hanesuos lanu al yidei chuppah v'kiddushin. So v'hitir lanu is that then Chazal were matir to us, our wives, that become mutter hanesuos lanu al yidei chuppah v'kiddushin. They become mutter. What's the process? Chuppah v'kiddushin. Any questions? I've decided I'm going to work you harder this man. I'm going to be less talky, more, don't know, not because they walky, but more, no question? Okay, it's an obvious question. The Seder had the
She's not in the Surah before. She's not married before.
So I'm making the bracha at a point in time when I'm saying v'hitilana, that she who will become nesua to me shortly. Good. Another question. Your question's also valid. What you were going to ask? The order's wrong. It says chuppah v'kiddushin. That's not what we do. We do kiddushin v'chuppah. And as we're going to discover something really interesting in the Rishonim, this could be a case of a copyist's error. The original nusach we're going to see in the Rishonim, according to many Rishonim, was alidei chuppah b'kiddushin. But because it was a vase rofa, so the copyists then eventually it became like Chinese whispers, right? The game we used to play around the table. Eventually, and you end up with something really funny, right? So it was chuppah v'kiddushin with a vase, and it eventually got written into whoever was the medieval art scroll wrote it down as v'kiddushin with a vav, and now it's a shaila now. Do we keep what is very possibly a mistaken text, or do we change it back? All will become clear. Just opening up some of the things here. Now, the last piece of Rashi here is the two versions of whether chosim or loy chosim. So Rashi is going to explain. Mandaloi chosim, those who don't say the Baruch Atah Hashem at the end because it's like Birchas Eirusin. Al hashchita zot Rashi, al hashchita v'al amila. Dekim dekula chado hoida'ahi. Very interesting. Notice that word. It's all one hoida'ah. So even though we're in a Birchas Mitzvos, it still has an element of hoidah. I'm thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for, never forget, when you're making a Birchas HaMitzvos, Asher Kiddushonu b'mitzvos tzivonu lanech tefillin. Because Asher Kiddushonu, we're gaining, you're elevating, sanctifying us, being meroimim us. So it's beautiful, it hit me as I saw this Rashi. He uses the word hoidah, even though it's classic Birchas HaMitzvos. But he throws in hoidah. Don't forget, every Birchas HaMitzvos is also a hoidah, although it's a Birchas HaMitzvos. And therefore, by a classic Birchas HaMitzvos, there's kula chad hoidah. There's one hoidah for the milah. I'm thanking you once for the milah. Ve'ein hefsek bakosha bein tayim. So therefore, there's no hefsek of a bakosha in between. Therefore, lo boi chasima. Doesn't require a chasima. Kidama barvi psachim. Birchas HaMitzvos tamamam mishum da hoidahi. Hainam kula hoidahi. It's a gemara psachim. That's the one who says that there's no chasima. Man to chosim, he says, midah da'ava akidusha. Says Rashi, given the beloshen kedusha, the bracha is beloshen kedusha. Okay, we'll have to think what that means for a minute. Kekiddush hayoim, chosminon bo hosom ki hosom. The bahi chosminon shum yesh ba hefsek. Kegoyin ki hu yom tchilal mikroi kodesh. There's a bit of a hefsek. So Rashi needs a bit of I'm not sure I've fully got to the bottom of this Rashi. You got what's going on over here? Rashi's giving the rationale. He's saying, Pshat in the Gemara, that, who was it? Rav Acha, who was Messiah. Why was he Messiah? Because it's like, admittedly it's a Birchas HaMitzvos, but it's like Kiddush. So what? What's unique about Kiddush that it has its own, we do, Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadosh HaShabbos. Is it the fact that it's Kiddush, it's Kedusha? Well, every Birchas HaMitzvos you say, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvos. No, it's because you're making a bracha on Kedusha of an item, in this case a day. And here, presumably, we are making a bracha on the Kedusha of the intimate relationship. So Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvos v'tzivon al roetz. Alidei chuppah v'kiddushin. Now, even though there's no bakosha as such to interrupt, but there is a hefsek. Because we go on and on. We have your narrative, like you said, and for that reason, there is a hefsek, not a hefsek as in invalidating it, but enough of a hefsek to enable me then to go and finish off and say, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadesh Amo Yisrael Al Chuppah V'Kiddushin, and this is the shaila. Okay, these are the two opinions. These are the two Amiroim. It'll come out in the wash. Let's start the Rishonim. The Beis Yosef, okay? So instead of going through all the Torah and all the Beis Yosef, not that it's that long, I've taken out the two main bits which I think are relevant for us. By the way, if anybody wants to volunteer to say it, I'm more than happy. Don't all shout at once, but okay, maybe not today, maybe a shorter piece or whatever. Fine. Number 3, Zog the Beis Yosef. V'kos havaran. V'im toima. Heichon motzinu brocha kegoin zu shemavarchen ala isur. Whose question was it? It was your question, wasn't it? Great. Baruch shekivanta l'divrei haran. The Ran asks Saz's question. Okay. Where do we find a bracha that we make a bracha on an isur? V'haloi ein mevarchen sh'asalon evim menachai v'telon esashchita. I didn't make it up. Yeah? We don't make a bracha on he forbid evim menachai, but he allowed us ushchita. V'oid, question number 2, loma ein mevarchen b'matbe'ah kotzer. right? Which is really what the Gemara was discussing. Why don't we have the short formula? Asher kiddushaну ala kiddushin, k'moshe v'varchin al kol ha-mitzvah b'matbei ha'kotzer, ala mila, ala shchita, yesh leima. Devadai ein brocha zu birchas ha-mitzvah mamash. Interesting. Says the Ram, this is not a quote, birchas ha-mitzvah mamash, she'i efshel levorich, k'fi ma she'roi levorich, b'birchas ha-mitzvah, because it's impossible. We can't do a good job by making a bracha of as we should. She'ein levorich b'shas ha-kiddushin, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvah v'shtivanu al ha-kiddushin. Do you know why? Mishum te'ein mevorchin al mitzvah she'ein asiyoso gemar melachta. There's a gemar menachos. You don't make a mitzvah, a bracha, on a mitzvah that has either a time lag or the outcome and the purpose and the tachlis and the kiyum of the mitzvah is not instantaneous. If it isn't instantaneous, then you don't make a bracha on such a thing. And here, of course, ki hai da'akati mechsera mesira lechuppah, because the purpose of kiddushin, there's no mitzvah to get married to a woman, right? Stand under the chuppah, hariyat mekudeshesli, she's an eishes ish, but I can't live with her. There's no point. The point is then to do chuppah, knisa l'rishus, to be intimate, to piriv arivia, to have married life, to have children. So it's not the gemar mitzvah, and therefore really there should be no bracha. In a classic case where it's not the ein asiyoso gemar melachta. That's the bit probably to highlight. So really we shouldn't make a bracha. Therefore zok the Ran ef shalei levorach al kiddushin v'chuppah. Now, what about chuppah? I'm going to do chuppah soon. Kiven shekva kiddush mizman meruba. Don't forget, today we do it all within a few minutes. And even then we make a hefsek davka with the ksuba, etc. Right? But certainly in those days, very often, it was quite a while between the kiddushin and the chuppah. Right? So what should I do? So by the time I get to do the chuppah, the kiddushin is long gone. So to make a bracha on something where I may not be being goymer the mitzvah for days, weeks, months, that doesn't make any sense. At least, even if you choose to do it immediately, but you can't make a bracha on an institution that can, in itself, you can separate it by hours, days, months, weeks, or possibly even years. And therefore, it would not be appropriate to have a standard birchas hamitzvos. Now what would be so he asks it more clearly. What happens if we do it like we do it? We're going to do it all together. Still, the second bracha. You have to have a uniform text, obviously, of a bracha for every opportunity. You can't start saying, well, if you do it within 20 minutes, then this is the bracha. If you do it in half an hour, that's the bracha. If you do it 3 months later, there's no bracha. It doesn't go. Chazal always nosnu dvarim l'shirim. The Teufels bracha has to be shabalaka. The chim and the birchas mitzvah mamash yefsha. So it's not a birchas mitzvah. Can't be. But beautiful. Listen to this lesson. Lo rotzu lahitza mitzvah zu b'lei bracha klal. This is too important an occasion, not for it not to have a bracha. We're a bit stuck. We feel very strongly, say Chazal, that this should have a bracha, but we can't give it the classic birchas mitzvahs. But we didn't want to let it go by. Therefore, v'tiknu levarech bo al kedushosam shel Yisrael. This is a bracha on the kedusha of Klal Yisrael. V'hainu sheHakadosh Baruch Hu bochar bohem. Hashem chose us. V'kiddusham, and one of the ways that He sanctified us and made us special is be'inyan zivug, ba'osur lahem u'b'muta lahem. V'hainu shetzivonu alo haroyos. So it's not a birchas hamitzvos. So it's a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's masquerading as a birchas hamitzvos. It's a bit sneaky, isn't it? Asher kiddushonu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu alo haroyos.
Like a loisase.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. So ukedei shelo yita Hashem elei m'shem b'kiddushin elu b'lvad hutru amutarois. In order that we should not make the mistake of thinking that by doing kiddushin now, because we said v'hitilanos anasuos, so therefore hutzruchu loima, so we have no choice. We've got to make a bracha. It's too important to pass up an opportunity of a bracha on kedusha shel Yisrael. He stops short of giving it of giving it the as we're going to see in a minute, the rosh it has no hesitation about very clearly coming out and classifying it totally differently as a Birchas HaShevach, V'hoidah. If you notice, the Ram doesn't quite do that. He says it's not a Birchas HaMitzvah mamash. It's not mamash. It can't be mamash. He says mamash twice. Right? It's not quite. It falls short of the threshold. So, and he doesn't say he says it's Kedushosam Shel Yisrael. He doesn't actually use the word Hodah, I think. So therefore, we had to add in this long clause, Hutzruchu loyma v'osron saruso is belav de loy sasur, v'hizkir heteron dahani alidei kiyum, dahani alidei chuppah v'kiddushin, ad kan l'shoyne. That's the opinion of the Ram. So far so good? Good? Let's move on to the Rosh. Says the Rosh. Good, we're moving. Again, this is base source 4. This is the Beis Yosef in the name of the Rosh. Same question. The Rosh asks the same question. The Tiritz, and here's the Teretz of the Rosh. Nirali. Ki brochozu eina brocha lasiyas hamitzvos. Ki pirya v'rivya hainu kiyum hamitzvah. The mitzvah really here is pirya v'rivya. And this is something we're going to examine. Pardon? Is the Rosh saying there is no mitzvah? Ki yikach ish isha. Is kiddushin not a mitzvah according to the Rosh? And this is actually going to be the next part of the Shir, where we're going to examine the Shittas HaRambam, the Chinuch, and then see it, contrast it to other Rishonim. What is the mitzvah? Are there two separate mitzvahs? Is there only one mitzvah? Is Nisuin, and then where does Nisuin fit in? Let's assume, and this is going to be a real problem, let's assume that Eirusin is a mitzvah. I'm going to show you shortly the Shittas HaRambam and the Shittas HaChinuch and the Smag, even though I didn't include it because we can't do everything, but their Shitta is that Eirusin is a mitzvah, if ne'atzmai. Piri v'riv is a separate mitzvah. The Rambam counts them both.
But we don't say bracha on it.
That's for other reasons. Well, that's something else we need to know, but what I'm more interested in at the moment, good point, is it therefore follows that Nisuin, Chuppah, Nisuin, no mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah. There's no Birchas, and we do Birchas, then we're going to have to see when Birchas Nisuin, what's all that about? Or are they two separate mitzvahs? The Rambam, this is what we're going to have, this is where we're going. And therefore, just be medayik the Lashon HaRosh. The Rosh says, he asks these questions, and he says, Nirali, ki brochazu eino brocha lasiyas hamitzvos. Ki pirya v'rivya hainu kiyum hamitzvah. Notice that Lashon, if you're lamdonim asiyas hamitzvah, kiyum hamitzvah, you see that? Very important. What would be v'lokach pilegesh, v'kiyum mitzvahs pirya v'rivya? Yeah, according to the Rosh. However, you're going to learn whether it's the Rambam, the Raavad, you jump through all the hoops and you make sure you have a pilegesh. And with this pilegesh, you have children. Have you been Mekayim the mitzvah Piri V'Rivya? Yes. So you've been Mekayim Piri V'Rivya. In other words, you don't need Kiddushin in order to be Mekayim the mitzvah Piri V'Rivya. You can be Mekayim the mitzvah Piri V'Rivya independently. There is, now this is going to be something, I'm jumping right into it. If you hold that Eirusin, that Kiddushin is a mitzvah, here's a question for you. I'm going to demonstrate very shortly. The Chinuch and the Rambam say, mitzvah is going to see very clearly it's a mitzvah. Is it a mitzvah chiyuvis or a mitzvah kiyuvis? You all know the difference, right?
Which one?
Mitzvah chiyuvis is one where you absolutely, this morning we all put on tefillin, that was a mitzvah chiyuvis. I had zero choice about whether to get out of bed and put on tefillin. No. On the other hand, I am wearing tzitzis. And it's a mitzvah kiyumis. Because if I were not to have a four-cornered garment upon my body, there is no mitzvah min HaTorah for me to go and buy a four-cornered garment. But if you're wearing a four-cornered garment, then it's kiyumis. You want to eat meat? Do shchita. Yeah? Don't take it too far. There's a mitzvah, v'heshiv esagzela. But, don't go and steal. There are also, to be massive grushosai. There was actually a very funny, maybe off camera I'll tell you, there was a funny Purim spiel, a very funny video, but certain yeshiva did it, you might be familiar with it, I'll show it to you, it's very funny. Anyway, it's Purim Torah, this sort of thing. Somebody was very frum, so he was machmir, he was stole in order to be Mekayim Zagzela. And he was, whatever, all this sort of, but it's actually quite funny. The point is, you understand now the difference between mitzvah chiyuvis and mitzvah kiyuvis, right? So here's the question. Is Kiddushin L'das HaRambam and L'das HaChinuch? Is it a mitzvah chiyuvis or kiyuvis? You have to you're going to have some evidence, my friend. Okay, maybe. We'll see. You may actually be right. You got a raya? Or is it just a feeling?
Not yet.
It's not even a feeling yet, or is no raya yet? It's a feeling but no raya. Okay, that's Torah. Let's see. You might actually prove to be right. We'll see. So look at this Rosh. What does the Rosh say? The Rosh says, Peri of Arivia, you can be Mekayim with a Pilegesh. Nachon? Be Mekayim Peri of Arivia with a Pilegesh. And look at the Lashon Rosh. Ve'im lokach Pilegesh v'kim mitzvahs Peri of Arivia, einoi mechuyev lekadei shisha. Ve'ilkach. And that is the reason that there's no mitzvah. Even though we do make a bracha on mitzvahs kiyumis, we make a bracha on shchita, we make a bracha on tzitzis, etc. Okay, we'll see. But so this is the Rosh. It's slightly different to. I don't want to belabor the point too much. Slightly different to the Ram. Did you notice? Slightly different. Al Kol Polim says the Rosh. It's not a birchas hamitzvahs. V'hilkach therefore lo nisaknu bracha b'mitzvah zu. What would be if you are marrying not a pilegesh? You're marrying a woman l'shem pirivirivia. But given she'ev shelakayim is pirivirivia b'lei kiddushin, they can be decoupled. They can be detached because it is possible to be mekayim pirivirivia without kiddushin. Ubrachazun nisakna. Now here's the fridge magnet. Here's the highlight. Yeah. Ubrachazun nisakna lo say shevach lakodesh baruch hu. Stronger than the Ram.
The previous statement is only because it's Deovaisa. I mean, Deovaisa, she would permit it to you after Nisuin.
Well, I'm not with you.
Deovaisa, you said that after Nisuin, she would permit it to you.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's the Rabbanon that we need.
Correct.
And therefore, you would say, theoretically, she would be permitted to you, right?
Minat Torah. He's not really going in. He's not really going into that point as such. That means a pilegesh. No, he means a pilegesh. He means pilegesh. He just said it the line before. He means pilegesh. Yeah. And therefore he says this bracha is an isakna loses shevach. It's a birchas shevach. It's very clear. He's said it. He's come out with it. He said it. We suspect the Ram would agree, but he doesn't quite say it. Here the Rosh says it absolutely clearly. And it's known in the Yeshiva Shavel, this is the famous Machlikas, the Rosh and the Rambam. Birchas Eirusin is in the Birchas Mitzvahs. Every Yeshiva, when they come to Ksubas Daf Zayin, the Rosh Yeshiva will give us a beautiful Shir Klali on all the various different lomdas, and we will see some of it, some bits of it. I'll pick out some sweet bits for you, Yitzhak. But for us, this is important, and we'll see. It makes big differences in halacha. Right. But so therefore, then he says, similar to the Ran, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvah tzivanu lav dilonu min ha'amim. Is a havdalah. He brings another word, havdalah. Hamavdil bein kodesh l'chom l'chom l'chom. It's a havdalah. V'tzivanu l'kadesh yishamu teres lonu v'lo yachas mino haroyos. V'hizkiru by hetan asuis b'chumah v'kiddushin. V'isar arusois. Why do we mention that? Shelo yita adam loy masha brocha shel kiddushin yisakna lahatira loy. Somebody might make the mistake, and this is similar to the Ran. Somebody might make the mistake of thinking that the bracha of Kiddushin is there. Oh, I've done the bracha of Kiddushin. Now she's mutter to me. No. So we add this nusach. The bracha of the chuppah is matter the kala. And here, by the way, he answers the other question. And that's why we deliberately reverse the order. We put chuppah before Kiddushin. Leimar, hitilonus and asus alidei chuppah, which comes acha birchas hakiddushin. And that's why we deliberately reverse it. Ad kan l'shoin harosh.
I have a question.
Yes.
What he says, is it his nusach or is his explanation for the?
No, the nusach is in the Gemara. It's his explanation of the nusach. I don't think he's changed anything in the nusach. The nusach, remember, we saw the nusach in the Gemara. Okay? Let's move on. We've seen the machlokes rishonim. So far, we've seen, not really so much. We haven't really seen the machlokes rishonim yet. We have seen the Ran and the Rosh, who are pretty much on the same page, although we could split. We could argue the toss about whether, according to the Ran, it's mamish birchas hashevach. He doesn't say it. There are a few different chilukim in the way they put it forward. Now here comes the one that is definitely not like the Ran and the Rosh, and this is source 5, the Rambam. Zog the Heilige Rambam. Kol ha-mekadesh isha bein al yidei atzmai bein al yidei shliach. And this basically is, by the way, the nusach that the Shulchan Aruch is going to use when we eventually get to learning Siman Lamed and Sif Aleph. He uses this nusach. It's the Lashon Rambam, you'll recognize it. Kol ha-mekadesh isha bein al yidei atzmai bein al yidei shliach tzorich levorech koidem ha-kiddushim. Hu oishluchai. Any thoughts?
If someone else does it,
Oh!
how can it be?
Oh, very good. You should know, in Minhag Teiman, based on the Rambam, the Chassan makes the bracha. It's his bracha. Why on earth there's some guy in a beard and a long coat to say under the chuppah? Mechatesa. Shaila even why the Moil makes the bracha of Alamila and then they separate it, all the Rabbi Kivega, nice Torahs. But really it's, and this we're going to see. I'm tempted to tell you a Hanhaga of Rabbi Elyashiv. Rabbi Elyashiv used to say, I'll just throw it in and we'll come back to it in a few shiurim's time. Rabbi Elyashiv used to tell the Chassan, and also have to forget the Chassan and the Kala, to have kavanah to be yotze with the Birchas Hagofen. That's it. Not the and that I'll unpack that later. I'm throwing it in now just to get your mind going. Okay? So it's the Rambam says clearly, you or the Shliach makes the bracha, of course. V'achakach mekadesh, and then you do kiddushin. Kederech shemavorchin kodem kol hamitzvos. Standard, classic, garden variety Birchas HaMitzvos. Yeah? English expression. Ve'im kiddush v'lo beirach. Now here is where we're going to get ourselves into a fascinating sugya. Fascinating sugya. We're going to see this is a Tshuvas Rivosh. Tashbats. It's a Tashbats. Less is more. That's the way that one works. Never mind, just leave it. Let's go. Let's try and finish off this Rambam. Listen to this, guys. This is really important. Ve'im kiddush v'lo beirach. What would be if for some reason guy did kiddushin? Oh my gosh, we forgot to say the bracha. Kiddush v'lo beirach. Lo yivarech achar hakidushin shezu bracha levatolo. Now, and he adds, Mashenase kvanase, says the Rambam. Shoin gedavant. Too late, done, finished. Mashenase kvanase. There would be 0 point. Now, question for you. What do you think the Rambam means? Could you give me 2 possible alternatives as to the case here, the scenario? And you should know it's something the Achronim talk about. Think about it. Again, the case is, they did Eirusin, and they forgot Kiddush v'lo birach. That's all he says. Kiddush v'lo birach. He says, Lo yivarach achar ha-kiddushin. Give me 2 possible scenarios as to what the Rambam might be talking about. Very straightforward. Come on.
Basically, what's kiddushin without the bracha?
Go on.
Beer.
Okay, you don't have to be quite that drastic. But no, it's simple.
Put on the ring over here.
Yes, that's kiddush, v'lo birach. That's all the Rambam says. He did kiddushin,
Right.
but they didn't do Birchas Eirusin.
So then, b'diavad.
No, I'm not asking. Well, he says that you're done. You finished.
What's the scenario?
But my question is, in the case, what is he talking about? Give me 2 very simple possible scenarios.
He didn't do the chatima or the formulation, the lashon.
No. Kiddush v'lo birach, loy berach, kein bracha gesagt hatte. Whatever. He didn't say any bracha. Nicht gebencht. Yeah. Very simple. It's simple. Is the Rambam talking about a case where immediately after the Eirusin, prior to the Nisuin, they're still under the chuppah? Literally a second later, OMG, we didn't do the thing. Or is it after the chuppah?
After the chuppah.
Maybe not. That's what I understand.
Yeah.
And then that could potentially make a difference. What do you think the Ran or the Rosh would say in this case? Put yourself in the shoes of the Ran or the Rosh, and this Shaila comes to you. Was sagen Sie, Herr Rabbiner?
So I think the Rosh would also say they shouldn't repeat.
Und warum?
Because he says the bracha is just for Sheva.
Oh, and now we don't need to thank him anymore.
No.
Because I did the Kiddush in 33
No,
seconds.
but he says it's because the Ikar is the mitzvah of Priya Merivia.
Yeah, which you
Okay.
also have not yet done. You're digging a hole. Yeah, when you dig a hole, stop digging. What do you think, seriously? Why is the Rambam saying it's no good? What's the concept? Why is the Rambam saying it's no good? Because, for the same reason that if you ate an apple and didn't say a bracha, it's too late. You've eaten the apple.
So he must hold that's not a key.
He says the reason that we do the order. He says the Rambam says very clearly. The reason that we make the bracha and then the kiddushin is kederech shemavorchin koidem kol hamitzvos. He couldn't be clearer. He is treating this like the classic Birchas HaMitzvahs, where we are mavorach over lasiyosam. You do a bracha, you do the mitzvah, and if you've done the mitzvah already, you've done the mitzvah. Suck it up. It's too late. There's no point. There's nothing to make a bracha on, because the bracha is on the Maisa, the Kiyum HaMitzvah thing. If your name is the Ran and the Rosh, then it's not a Birchas HaMitzvahs. It's a Birchas HaShevach. You're still standing until chuppah. You're given the ring to your kala, who you're going to live with B'kedusha V'Tahara at Bias Gel Tzedek B'Meirab Yomeinu Amen, and your heart is overflowing with Shevach V'Idol HaKadosh Baruch Hu Asher Dilonu V'Kiddushonu V'D. You can't say the bracha now, Rabbeinu D'Kula Alma. Of course you can.
It's like a Shechionu.
What is? You hear? That's the thinking, guys. I led you right down the garden path. That is l'chura. They would say very differently. If you're going to say the pshat in the Rambam is only when you've done the chuppah already, maybe. And by the way, I'm going to show you mafurish. We're going to see it. And today we're out of time. Let's zog the Raavad, hasagas Raavad. So the Rambam says if you make it 1 second later, he's put on the ring. You make it 1 second later, you've been over an Issa Deiraisa under the chuppah of Leisisa. The bracha levatala. Yeah, you've just been over one of the Aseres Adibras under the chuppah. Well done, mate. Yeah, shazu bracha levatala. Masha nasa kvanasa. You put the ring on a finger, it's gone, done. Zog the Raavad, tzarich levarch kedim kiddushin. What? The Raavad. I'm just reading weiter. The Hasagas Raavad. The Raavad.
That's why we're so careful to.
I told you. That's right. Very good. Tzarich levarch kedim kiddushin. Ayhu ashlach v'achachem kaddish. Omar Avram. Ein oim anu oimrin came. Oh, he says something else. He says Mekadesh v'achakach mevarach. So the Raavad says, we do it the other way around. We are Mekadesh and then we make a bracha. And the Raavad brings in an interesting point, which let's have a look at. Vatam mipnei shadova toli b'das acherim. What would be if she gets cold, the proverbial cold feet at the very cold fingers, whatever you want to call it, at the very last minute, and he's standing there under the chuppah, and he says. The Rav says, no, hold out your finger. And she says, you know what? Zaygazuk. Sayonara. See you later. I'm out of here. Okay? So you made a bracha. You're from a brisker. No. You know the joke about the brisker with the he makes the bracha al kiddush. He's facing the firing squad. He's making the bracha al kiddush Hashem, and then he gets a pardon. And he goes, no, hefsek. You shoot me. So the Meir Baruch says the Raavad, because this is a mitzvah that is toloi b'das acherim, it takes two to tango. If she does not decide to be a willing party, and we're going to talk about the das, by the way, the das of an isha b'kiddushin is a very important topic. Ran in Dorim, we have to see some important halachas and ideas about that. But he says we do it the other way around. We do kiddushin, and then we do the bracha. Because if you do the bracha, she has the potential to turn around and say no. And this, by the way, is the reason why we don't make a bracha mishlech monos like the Rashba, various other things. It's toli b'das acherim because shim timosha cheshim leititz lekabel av bracha levatala. V'zeh atam lebrichas ha'av shemavarach lachnisa b'vrotzet shel Avram Avinu, and that's why we make the bracha of that the father makes the varach lachnisa. Okay, so far we will have to leave it for today, but we've made some good progress, guys. We've began to get ourselves into the sugya. To be continued tomorrow. Well, we'll get into the Rambam and the Chinuch, and we may even possibly start the Shulchan Aruch tomorrow, depending on